Hello and welcome back for another episode. Today we are going to be talking about a whole host of new interesting topics with Zacharias, myself, and our lovely host Thidriker.
Goðan, everyone.
So we're going to kick right into it and start talking about the topics for today, right after we thank you all for your views and comments from last video. It was really great to see so much interaction and to get so much feedback from you guys and gals.
Thanks so much. We really appreciate everyone sitting through 45 minutes of us talking about Pokemon Go competitive PvP. We really appreciate the views. We appreciate the enthusiasm and all of the interest you all are expressing in it.
That is definitely true, and it's great to know there's a lot of other like-minded people out there looking for spice and looking to run stuff that's fun. See how that fits into the world of Pogo PvP at the moment.
Yeah, so why don't we start with our Go Battle League section. Now, this is really just general overview. It works for all PvP, not Silph, but for a lot of people, again, just getting into it or considering getting into it, we're going to talk about IVs. What are they? Do they matter? How can we tell? Should we be chasing that rank 1 1498, whatever the Pokemon may be? And we're going to focus on Great League today because I think the IVs are less interesting in Master League. The answer is you want 100. And it does sometimes, especially everyone who plays a lot knows Dialga. If you have a 14 attack Dialga, you lose. And it's just the saddest thing in the world that 100%, you've got to have that. So we're going to talk about Great League, where I think they're a little more fluid, they're a little more flexible, and they don't always have a super big impact, I think, but they definitely have enough of an impact for a discussion. So yeah, why don't you tell us what we mean when we talk about IVs, Zacharias?
Yeah, so when you've got your mon, you can see the attack, you can see the defense, you can see the stamina when you go in and ask your lovely house head, whatever you want to call it, team leader. So when you break that down and you look, let's, for the sake of argument, talk about wigglytuff, which I think is something we're going to spend a little bit of time on now. You have a high attack stat on that. You're going to be dealing more damage, right? You have a higher defense stat. You're going to be taking less damage. You have a higher stamina stat. You're going to have more HP. That's how it really works. Simple as. But the way that comes together when you're looking at Great League and you have the limit of 1500 CP, that combat power CP is entirely based on the idea of getting those three stats to add up in a formula to less than 1500 or 1500. And attack is doubly weighted. So what does that mean? That means if you're running your 15 attack wigglytuff, you're going to have to sacrifice a lot more of your defense and HP, right? Your defense is half stacked, basically. You can think of it as 1 times, and then everything in your attack and your stamina is 2 times, right? So then you're stuck saying, how do I balance that? You can't just have 15, 15, 15. It can't be a hundo to get your, good 1500 wigglytuff. That's the way your mind would go, because you want to get that bulk in there, right? So typically that's the way you look at it, that the rank 1 for Great League, most people would say is, a rule of thumb, 115, 15, or in and around that range. Very low attack, good defense, good HP. So then you can basically survive long enough to get that last charge move off. That's more or less the philosophy as I understand it. And I think that's more or less the philosophy as most people look at it.
Yeah, so I'll just jump in. The reason why it's so confusing, why is attack double weighted, why is HP and defense not? Because in the main series games where they're converting these stats from, speed is a very important aspect of the game because it picks who goes first because it's turn-based. Pokemon Go does not have turns, so speed is not a stat. So what they did was they converted speed into the attack stat and put it together. So that's why the attack stat has twice as much weight, quote unquote, on defining the CP as the defense and the stamina do. And so that means essentially you get half as much for every point of attack as you do for every point of defense and stamina when you're trying to fit it under one of those CP caps. So as you can see with the two wigglytuff I've put up here, for those of you that don't know, I come from a wargaming background where we firmly believe we need to have maximum points because most points wins at the end. So I always run 1,500 Pokemon, which is crazy because I'm going to tell you all why IVs matter. And then I'm going to tell you all that I only run 1,500 CP Pokemon, knowing they are almost always less than ideal. But you're just going to have to bear with me here. Because that's how I play and have been playing since the second month of Pokemon Go, which is where you see this beautiful attack weighted Wigglytuff here. The 1510 was the first mon I ran in my first cup before Charm even existed. I had a 15 attack pound Wigglytuff. Did not win that cup. Did not win that cup. But because he was in a tournament, that's why I've named him Retired. I can't get rid of Pokemon who I played because they mean so much to me. And then I've moved on to my other Pokemon here, which, as you can see, the IVs on it are much better. It's a 5 attack, a 4 defense, and a 12 HP. So you can see, most importantly here in the breakdown of my two Wigglytuff, in order to get 6 extra attack, I'm sacrificing 12 HP and 3 defense. And that 3 defense can make a huge difference because it can make a fast move go from doing 5 damage to 6 damage. So if I'm taking 1 extra damage per fast move and I'm 12 HP less, that can cost me a lot of matches. And we're going to play some videos here in a minute and see how that plays out. The flip side, though, is if I hit a breakpoint, especially since Charm is a huge damage move, and I'm doing an extra 1 or 2 points of damage because of that 6 extra points of attack, it can make me knock out a Pokemon before it gets to the finishing charge move. So we'll see why it plays out. But as a general rule, that's why we want to aim towards maximizing our stat product, which means defense and HP, because you get twice as much for attack, is what we really want to focus on. For anything that can go over our cap, 1,500 or 2,500, right? Dustox, we still want you to be 100, buddy. We love you. So, the few that, before XL candies were invented, Medicham was amazing. You wanted the hundo so you could have 1426, and it was still great. And now that it can go up to 1,500, Medicham's just so crazy broken. That mon just always outperforms for me. But yeah, so like that's what we mean when we talk about IVs. We have 3 stats in this game. But the reason why you don't want attack as a general rule is because it costs twice as much. You don't get as much as a payback for it. So this sounds really important, really impressive. Does it matter is the bigger question. I pointed out why it should matter, but in practice, does it matter? What's your feeling on this, Zacharias?
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely some play where you say, okay, let's say that the Venusaur Frostlass, you know that if it comes down to the very final, like if the game works as supposed to, air quotes, it's going to end on a CMP. So that's charge move priority, and the charge move priority will be whoever has the highest attack stat gets their charge move off first. So will Venusaur get its Frenzy Plant off, or will Frostlass get the Avalanche? So it ends up being, if you have, I think, a 5 attack stat, like I can't remember the exact number, it's over 111 or something, or 112 to guarantee. I can't remember off the top of my head exactly. But let's say you have a 5 attack stat Venusaur, and I have a 4 attack stat Venusaur. The 5 attack stat is most likely going to get the charge move off first. So, that matters in the mirror, and it matters in the Frostlass. We know that. We know that is definitely a thing that matters if the game works as it says on the tin. But does it matter, like you say, for that Wigglytuff comparison? Those two, you've got 12 less HP straight off the bat. You got 12 less HP. So you can take, 12 less hits, let's say. obviously they're 1 damage hits, so whatever is
Lock
licking you
on.
down, you lock exactly, yeah. And then you've also got the fact that the 14 attack or 15 attack one does 1 more damage versus a high stat product Azu. So you're dealing 12 damage per charm versus 11 damage. So if you're going to 2-shield your Wigglytuff against Nazu, then you obviously want that extra attack, right? You obviously want that extra damage. I mean, it's still a losing matchup in the 1-shield, one way or the other. But on the one hand, you're going to be dealing an extra, 10 damage probably, or 11 or 12, depending on how many charms you get through. And so there's definitely that, and Swampert as well is a limp out. Swampert will limp out of there if it baits and gets the sludge bomb on Wiggly. Versus your good IVs, it'll get you down and have 10 HP left. So you could say that's 10 HP. I don't know, gives you a second to think, and I don't know, maybe you could swap out and leave a tiny sliver of health left. On the other hand, it leaves you with a 1 HP Swampert to limp out of there. Now, that's either way, that's a charm, so it doesn't really matter. Still, if you sneak a charm through and or you don't bait or whatever, but it's 10 HP versus 1 HP. There's a clear difference there between the two. So does it really make a difference? The Sims say yes. In practice, I'm not as sold.
Yeah. So I think the most important time they matter is CMP ties, because you find yourself in those, and if you have a less than quote unquote ideal stat product, meaning your attack's a little higher, you're going to win those. So in the mirror is where I have personally found this mattering the most. Outside of that, a lot of outside factors can affect things. And we're going to kind of look at our videos now to show you this. We simmed several matches with these 2 umbreons that you can see here. Right, the good IV Umbreon is a 0-6-15, so it's super bulky, no attack. It should be able to live longer, versus my 14-12-4 Umbreon that I clearly want to run because it's the shiny one, and we all know shinies are better. And in this case, the shiny does do more damage because it's got 5 extra points in attack. But we ran the Sims, and then we tried to recreate this, and it resulted in us filming 9 videos wherein none of them came out the way the Sims predicted. It was just an absolute nightmare where nothing worked right. And the reason was fast moves kept getting snuck in, meaning when we were supposed to be stopped because a charge move was being thrown, a fast move still went through. And even though the damage didn't always register, the energy gains did. And that was throwing matches back and forth, left and right. But we can still see what the difference of 5 attack damage on these Umbreons is. We will look at what generally are considered neutral or close matchups that aren't ones, not mirrors where the CMP matters, and not ones where we're going to win easily, like Umbreon versus any ghost type. And then, as I mentioned, the bad IV one is shiny. It's got the Community Day move. For the sake of consistency, even though you're going to watch it fight a Venusaur, I'm just throwing the foul play so that it runs exactly the same, even though obviously in that case, Psychic is the way to go. So let's start with Umbreon versus Walrein. We're going to play this video, and then I'll let you comment while it's playing, and then we'll both comment afterwards, Zachariah. So here we go.
So it doesn't look like any moves snuck in at the start anyway.
Yeah, we didn't have any sneak moves, but notice that the attack weighted Walrein is slightly lower, and then we're going to shield this first move, so it's not going to matter. Just again, we're trying to recreate Sims on PV Poke.
Yeah. So again, equally, like, I'm not going to be throwing the Earthquake because it's a bait, but doing what the Sim does.
All right, so now we're going to see the first one go through. Let's look at the damage difference here. Attack weighted on the left, bulk on the right.
Yeah, you can see the difference, like, straight away into the yellow.
Yeah, as soon as we get to your earthquake, we're already in the yellow on Walrein on the attack weighted. But now watch how much the damage does in return, which is the flip side of bulk. So you can
Yeah.
see equally, we've got what looks like 6 or 7 HP more on the bulky Umbreon there. And then Walrein's almost dead on the attack weighted, but I don't think it's enough to make it until the Icicle Spear comes through. Yeah. Oh no, we won the CMP tie with the. I doesn't remember. We won the CMP tie and won it with the attack weighted. That's what it came down to. Charge moves at the same time. CMP tie actually gave it the win. Fascinating. I didn't even remember that's how it played out, even though I made that video.
Yeah, and that isn't the way the Sims would give the win to the bulk.
Yeah, because it should make it, but then you can see they both get to throw, and the Walrein just wins the CMP against the bulky one. So really interesting there. Now let's look at the Venu, which how's the Venu supposed to play out according to the Sims?
So the Venusaur, actually the higher attack stat is supposed to win.
Okay.
So on that one, it was supposed to be like a case of, you're saying, okay, the bulk isn't the win all, and we pick up the Venusaur. It's also supposed to pick up the Galvantula, but the Sim just, for some reason, throws wrong. It'll throw the last resort for no reason.
Got to burn that extra energy so that you're behind.
Exactly. So that's the problem, where the Sims go and say, oh, I don't really want to throw the foul play. But it's not resisted. You don't lose anything.
Yeah.
Same type attack bonus. So, and it's a lot cheaper.
All right, so we can see the attack weight's already got Venu down to half, whereas we're a little bit higher, but not much higher with the defense weighted here. So let's see how the Frenzy Plants land. Frenzy Plant's such a strong move. And you can see it's like maybe 4 or 5 extra HP on the bulky Umbreon.
Yeah,
so we throw
almost.
it at the same time, and then I think this is where we really are going to see the HP difference on the Venusaur down here in the red. Yep.
Yeah.
So if we had snuck one fast move with the attack weighted, or if we had been 1 energy up so that we could still get a fast move in after you threw, it wins.
Yeah.
It literally was limp. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think that the big thing there is my Venusaur just has the HP to survive it. On the Sim, your attack weighted, that last foul play just chips it out, just kills it. So it doesn't enough to hit back.
1 HP in a prayer there.
Exactly. Yeah.
And I think unless all you have in the back is a counter user, you're going to one-shot either of these Venusaurs with a fast move. You might take 2 counters on the one that was fighting bulky Umbreon, something like that. But so you can see there is a difference in these, and it almost felt like attack-weighted Umbreon was doing better. Like that extra HP wasn't mattering in the matchups we presented, which is an important one.
Yeah.
So the thing with Umbreon is it's known for its bulk. That's why people run it. Even when it loses, it tends to do some damage before it dies. So that's why we like the bulk, because we want it to stay around as long as possible, and it gets to charge moves relatively fast. Now, let's look at Wigglytuff, who's all about charm damage. Charge moves don't matter. If it throws 1 move, great. It's rarely going to throw a second move. I can count on one hand the number of times I've gotten 2 charge moves off with a Wigglytuff.
Yeah.
So we're going to start with Wigglytuff, which is versus Pelipper, where it's a neutral matchup and IVs are supposed to affect it. So you can see attack weighted on the left and defense weighted on, or HP weighted on the right. And the reason we chose these mons is because I had 2 of them with wildly different IVs, and they're both exactly 1500. So it's a good how the stats both equal out. Now, there's a level difference on them to get there, which also makes a difference. But notice on the attack weighted how much lower Pelipper's HP is. And then the weather ball comes through, and you can see Wigglytuff is in the red much faster, and it takes 2 more charms for the bulk weighted Wiggly to make it out, which is really interesting. Let's pull the video to the spot. We want to look at where the HP ends as well. So even though it takes us 2 more charms, we still end in the yellow with our HP Wigglytuff. So they both win. We win faster with the attack weighted, but we win with at least 1, possibly 2 more fast moves on the
good. Yeah, you get that extra farm, like you've got your move ready to go then.
Yeah, so make sure you don't get instant hit. If they bring in a poison user, you will live long enough to throw a charge move, at least to try and get back shield parity, which is really how I like Wigglytuff to be. I rarely will throw a charge move on whatever I am lining the Wigglytuff up against, because I know I'm going to shield it once, then I will just charm it down and I'll just throw on whatever comes in, because that's usually the best way to resume shield parity, instead of throwing it on something you're already going to beat and letting them bring the counter in you want with no energy on Wigglytuff. So if they bring in a fire type or a poison type and you've got no energy, they're just going to farm you down while taking super resisted damage. And that puts them in a better situation, where if I charm down, even if they bring in Macargo, which is what we faced a lot of in the last cup, throwing an Ice Beam against it, even though it's super resisted, or Play Rough, which is is resisted but not as much as Ice Beam. If they don't shield it, I'm at least going to get 25% of their HP off, which can make a difference in the long run, rather than just letting a Macargo farm down, take 2 incinerates, and now I can get to double overheat before I can get to a charge move, if that lines up, So yeah, what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, not much wants to eat that play rough. Like, it's exactly that. And the converse of that is you don't want to leave as much farm. So it's, slightly less advantageous than if you have in the yellow and you're going to take, 3 incinerates to get down, versus if you just have 1 incinerate left. There's always that little thought, am I going to be dead in 1 move, or am I going to be forced to swap out rather than just give a lot of farm?
Yeah, some mons like Sableye, which we mentioned last week, with an energy lead are just, and you don't bring Sableye into Wigglytuff, let me be abundantly clear, but I'm just talking about mons I know that energy leads cause huge differences. Cophagrigus is a better example because it's pure ghost. You bring a Cophagrigus in and you get a 3 Shadow Claw advantage. Well, it's probably going to take you 4 or 5 Shadow Claws because it's normal type. You lose some charm, a chunk of HP, but you're going to get 2 Shadow Balls off before they get to 1. It could be the case if they bring in a mirror or something else. So yeah, letting them store up energy is definitely something they consider. It's harder to consider in Go Battle League because you don't know what they've got in the back. But if you're doing a Silph Cup and kind of what the standard lines are, it can actually affect which one you want to bring because of whether or not you're going to limp away or let them farm down. All right, so now let's look at Wigglytuff versus Frostlass, which is another matchup that can flip based on the nature. So again, defensive on the right, offensive on the left. And we don't have to worry about Shadow Balls. We just have to worry about Avalanche on Frostlass, but Avalanche hits like a truck and Frostlass generates lots of energy. So there's no way we get equal shields here. You just have to accept that if you're trying to take down Frostlass. And then you need to know whether or not you need attack or bulk. So notice the Frostlass is almost completely dead here on the attack weighted, but it still lives enough to get to the Avalanche. So it's both of them throw, and we see here the HP weighted survives with enough to get the double charm down on it, leading to a mutual knockout. So now you don't lose switch advantage when you do it that way. You just gotta bring in blind again and hope for the win. But with Frostlass gone, chances are whatever you bring in will be much safer because you are leaving it in the back to not deal with Frostlass. Frostlass is one of those great safe answers. And so with their ghost type or their ice type down, you can bring out your dragon or you can bring out your ghost. So the double KO is much better than risking taking the ice damage if you have something in there, or losing the switch because you might come in and farm it, but then they bring in a hard counter to what you've got in and you've lost switch and you might lose the match. So it's definitely something interesting to play out. And so you can see these two very different wigglytuffs. With charm, I think it's much more obvious than with not last resort, with snarl on Umbreon plus foul play, because charge moves add up a lot faster, whereas fast moves add up a lot faster, not charge
Yeah.
moves. But yeah, so what are your final thoughts on IVs as we played 13 or 14 rounds with these mons to get a feel for it?
Yeah, so I think like that with the Frostlass, you can see there that it needs that bulk to get to that last charge move, right? So that's my shiny Frostlass. It's like a rank 8 or something, so it's like one attack stat and everything else mostly in the HP, it's like 1, 12, 15 or something. So keeping it alive just long enough to get that second avalanche, crucial, has to happen. You can't have an attack weight and survive long enough to kill the Wigglytuff or mutually KO with the Wigglytuff.
Yeah, and that's obviously something that we only were showing one side of the IV battle in these because it was, we control environment. We want to make sure we reproduce it, but you need to remember your opponent's IVs weigh in as well. So if they're running optimal stat product versus average stat product, it can flip matches much easier. If you have an attack weight and they have a defense deficit, then you're going to punch harder. And you can actually get extra 2 or 3 damage, I think, in extreme situations on big fast moves. So yeah, it's something to consider. And I would agree, especially with mons that want to throw charge moves, it feels like the bulk is essential, because if you die before you throw the second or the third charge move with Umbreon, your opponent ends with enough HP to probably get to another charge move, or at least whittle them down, right? I found that out with Dragalge during this month's cup, is as long as I can get a Dragon Tail or 2 in after I win my match and I get those 2 in, then it flips almost all of the remaining matchups. It's just enough chip to really matter. So the bulk really played important there.
No, for sure. And something like, Politoed or Frostlass, if you've been left with enough HP to keep it going to get that Weather Ball or get another Avalanche in, nobody really wants that to happen on their second mon that comes in. Even if you've taken a Politoed all the way down into the red, something else comes in, then they get the Weather Ball on that. That's just not, like you say, it flips the matchup for whatever else is coming in.
Sounds like you're speaking from recent personal experience. Are you still angry about Politoed?
Yeah, a little bit bitter about a lot of Politoads in this month's cup. I won't go further.
No, Politoed. I mean, that's the thing. Mons that have really spammy moves, especially if they can win and then just throw. That's why everyone likes Vigoroth. Just throwing a body slam or just throwing a Weather Ball, right? Those are kind of our 2 super cheap moves, or Icicle Spear if you're Walrein. Unless it's something that hard resists it, that can really flip a matchup. Just that little bit of chip damage, for sure. Sometimes just there's if you will look at Nemesis Cup, which we're going to get to in a minute. I'm just going to bring up a reference. There's a wonderful shoutcast by PvP Steve. Great job always on giving us early meta reads of one of my practice tournaments where I was running Tentacruel. And there's one match where I literally survive with 1 HP to throw the acid spray on the mon that comes in. And that's it. You're done. Your defense debuff and me getting switch advantage. I just walked through the match at that point. There was just no coming back from it. So having the bulk to last down and drop 1 extra charge move can really make or break matchups that aren't nearly as strong otherwise. And so with that in mind, we're going to jump to our next segment, because sometimes I think that's an important line to play with, and that's kind of how mine's going to do. We're going to jump here to what we're going to call Whose Line. This is the musical portion, so Zacharias is going to improv a song. No, wait, no, don't do that. No, but we're going to take the mons you all suggested, because we're having fun with that, and we're going to build a Go Battle League line for Great League around it. I think it's fun. I think we're having a great time. I think you all like having your favorite mons, us trying to make them viable. So I'll let you start with our first pick of this week. Take it away.
Yeah, so we were recommended Lantern, and so we're just looking at Open Great League again. So it's, we can look at Ultra or Masters or whatever another time, but for today, we're just saying your favorite mon is Lantern. How can you run that in Open Great League?
So real quick,
It's
shout out to Lieutenant Crunch for
yes,
suggesting Lantern. Thank you for your continued watching. But yeah, tell us how we can make Lantern win the day for us.
yeah, really appreciate the comment. So we're water electric, right? Obviously enough. It's Pokedex 171, the light Pokemon. So if you look at the ones in Open Great League, for the average IVs, just going back to the IVs again, you get a 47% win rate on the one shields. So that means of the meta, of the like 55 picks that PvPoke has for the Open Great League meta, Lantern was going to beat 47%. If you go towards a rank one, like towards rank one, doesn't have to be a rank one, but up around that range where you're getting more of the bulk. I think the default IVs are something like a 4 attack. You're bringing that attack down more into the bulk, more into the stamina. You can bring that win rate up all the way into the 56. So now we know that our sims aren't all they're cracked up to be, but it is what it is. That extra bulk lets you live long enough to get an extra Thunderbolt off or to bait the Thunderbolt and go straight for the Hydro Pump. So that can make or break a matchup. So Lantern, if you're using your favorite mon, get one that has the bulk in there to survive. So look, it's big losses are going to be stuff like Meganium. It's going to just completely be walled by Meganium. Shadow Nidoqueen, similar enough. Obviously, it doesn't want to take the Hydro Pump, and if you're crazy enough, Water Gun, everything goes the other way. So today we're just talking about running with Spark and Thunderbolt and Hydro Pump. So you're getting that real fast energy gain from Spark. Not much damage, but you got what you're wanting. You want to get those Thunderbolts off, and you want to get to that Hydro Pump to close out matches. You're also going to lose to the other grasses in the Great League meta, like the Venusaurs, Trevenants, but you're going to lose to Stunfisk. You're going to lose to Medicham, Registeel, Swampert, Umbreon. So those are pretty big hitters. They're common enough to see in Open Great League. So what you want to do is try and build a team that says, okay, we need something else to support us. We're ranked 102. So Lantern is 102 on PvPoke, Open Great League. What goes with that? What can work? So you're going to completely devastate anybody who tries to run an Azu or a Skarmory against you, right? Skarmory, all your moves are resisted. Azu just does not want those Thunderbolts. So you're going to need to say what teams then are you already beating, and what do I need to pair it with to win? So the stuff that you're losing to is the grasses. So let's say you go and you say, I want something that walls the grasses and can do something in return. So let's say Trevenant. So you're going, okay, fine. I have Lantern, I have Trevenant. So now I've got Ghost, Grass, and Water Electric. So what kind of goes with that? And what goes with the synergy of two things that are pretty spammy? Trevenant has the Shadow Claw, Seed Bomb. What sits next to that? I ended up on Walrein. And I think the reason is because I wanted to pair up more bulk. And it also gives you a sort of ABB flavor.
Mm-hmm.
You can lead your Trevenant and then swap in Walrein if you need to. It'll draw out some of the counters to Lantern. Both of them hit against flyers. So you've got that, anti-flyer roll. So somebody says, okay, I'm leading Skarmory. I lead Trevenant into Skarmory. Oh god, don't want that. Swap in Walrein. They swap out. I still have my Skarmory answering back. I still have my Lantern. So that's the ABB work. So the thought process there is really, I have my Lantern. I know what it beats. and I know what it loses to. I'm really weak to the grass of the ground, but I resist the steel, the flying, the water, the ice, the fire. So what do I need for the synergy there to make that work? And I don't deal much fast move damage. So do I want to lean into something that does deal fast move damage? Or do I want to just stick with the idea of hitting those charge moves so that when Lantern comes in late game, I just go straight for the Hydro Pump. I can go, shields down and let Lantern's massive bulk be my third shield and just go straight Hydro Pump and smash whatever comes in against. So the other thing you don't want is the dragons. The dragons are going to resist everything you can throw back at them. Like obviously Dragonite, you have the flying, so it's not straight resist, but Open Great League, you're not super likely. You see the occasional Shadow Dragonite in that, but regular Dragonite, I guess, as well. But you're much more likely
Altaria everywhere.
Yeah, you're going to see Altaria everywhere. So something like Walrein is going to just do super against that, obviously. You want that massive ice damage against Altaria, but you also want that massive ice damage against any dragon. There's nothing that they want to do about anything against those icicle spears. And like I say, Trevenant then sits there and has a great time against the grasses that you're weak to. So I think that's a solid way to work it out. Look at your strengths, look at your weaknesses. Say, okay, Lantern, you got your bulk, you got your nuke pressure, and your rapid energy gains. What does that fit with? Like, it really only does one job. You're very unlikely to run it with water gun. It's just not going to be the same performance. So it really only does one job. So what works with that? And I think that is a solid one. The Walrein Trevenant Lantern team is pretty weak to Umbreon, but you can beat it with Walrein and Lantern. Walrein takes it pretty close. Trevenant obviously wants nothing to do with Umbreon. And, the seed bombs aren't going to do anything, or, they're not going to do nothing, but they're also not going to chip away fast enough. And if you're one shield up at the end, let's say you've managed to swing it so that Lantern's your closer, and you're a shield up against them, you've got 85.5% of the meta as a win. So if you can just go straight for the Hydro Pump or straight for the double Thunderbolt, and you can shield whatever's coming back, Lantern wins 85.5%. So that's a good way to be. 85.5 is a nice big number if you can swing the 1 versus 0 shield. So that's where I went for this week.
All right, interesting. So I am going to be doing the Pseudo Wudo requested by longtime viewer Evie. Morning Dew, thank you so much. Shout out. Appreciate all the support. Pseudo Wudo is a fascinating one. So on PvPoke, it is sadly ranked number 227. 216. I was off because I had it on not overall. Pseudo Wudo is a fascinating one. So it's a rock type counter user with Earthquake as a charge move. So the big problem is that Pseudo Wudo just absolutely gets destroyed by other fighting types. If you run into a Metacham or a Scrafty, there's just nothing you can do. You are going to get pummeled into oblivion, and they will probably store buckets of energy because they're not too worried about you. So when I look at Pseudo Wudo, what makes Pseudo Wudo unique? Well, its counter use is enough for it to beat the big boy Bastiodon because it's rock type. It resists Dugong while doing super effective against it. So that's great. It isn't weak to the rock typing that it throws or lets it resist bugs and throw against bugs strong. And it also, because counter is just such a great move, lets you throw rock slides pretty quickly, which means you beat most flyers, which is something that the fighters typically struggle with. So Pseudo Wudo really does well against Starmie, really does well against Talonflame, really does well against Pidgeot, are kind of the three big flyers that we see. It does decently well against Altaria. Usually it's not going to beat it rock slide will hurt it, but Altaria is just so bulky that those fast moves, Dragon Breath, eventually will get you there, but it'll limp away. So that's something. So I said, all right, well, I have to beat fighters because Pseudo Wudo is just going to fall apart from them. And I also need to deal with grass types, which are especially Venusaur, because they will destroy Pseudo Wudo as well. And Trevenant, right? Trevenant also, you don't want to encounter Pseudo Wudo. And I also know that Pseudo Wudo, even though he sims 20 or 37% win rate against the average meta, which isn't great. It's not awful though, it's perfectly usable. When you get to the 0 shield, or when you have 0 shield and a counter or 2 advantage, he gets to Earthquake fast enough that he closes out so many more matchups. So I wanted to put something that beats fighters and pressures shields, so we can get Pseudo Wudo into the no shield scenario to drop an Earthquake and beat anything that's not flying for the most part. So I paired him with Talonflame because Talonflame's amazing. Talonflame's a great lead. No one wants to take Brave Bird. And if you can either throw Brave Bird and instantly swap out so that you force the shield or win the first round, or you can try and get the shield bait with Flame Charge and then run away with it. Either way, I really like Talonflame, and it handles the grasses and the fighters super well. Well, now we've got 2 Pokemon who are super weak to water, which means we've got to deal with, especially Azumarill, our biggest problem. But both of these mons also, unfortunately, struggle with Galarian Stunfisk, which is super common, and we don't want a line that's weak to Galarian Stunfisk. Pseudo Wudo can at least get it below 50%. If you call the baits correctly, you can get it to sometimes red. So that can help, but it's not a matchup you're likely going to win because Mudshot is super effective, and it's going to get to Earthquakes quick enough. So the third mon, I had 2 options I put in. I think both of them work well because you need something that is bulky, because Talonflame is definitely not bulky, and Pseudo Wudo in neutral matchups and losing matchups is not bulky. So my first choice, which I really like, is Azumarill, but with Hydro Pump. Because you need that Hydro. So Play Rough Hydro Pump is the moveset I would run in this Azumarill line. You need the Hydro Pump to push your way through the Stunfisks. You also want Hydro Pump to hard win any of those, the Registeel matchup. If you get locked against steals, you need Hydro Pump because Ice Beam, Play Rough isn't going to get there. And then you need Play Rough to, 1, win the Azumarill mirror, or at least tie the Azumarill mirror, as well as knock out any of those dragon types that might be showing up that Pseudo Wudo is going to struggle against. So I really do like Hydro Pump Azumarill for our third. It gives us a lot of coverage. It gives us a safe swap because Azumarill doesn't have terrible matchups, even in the matchups that Azumarill loses, especially if you're swapping into it so you get a 1 bubble lead. You can really put a lot of hurt unless they happen to be running, I think it's Galvantula, Ferrothorn, and Meganium, where you're not going to get anything done because you don't have Ice Beam, so the grasses you're going to struggle against. But if they bring in Meganium, then you get to bring in Talonflame and not Shield and get 2 Flame Charges, or a Flame Charge plus a Brave Bird ready to throw whatever comes in. So that's the sacrifice we make with Azumarill coming in. The other option, if you don't like Azumarill or you don't want to do it, is our good old bulky boy Venusaur. Venusaur handles the fairies, especially Azumarill. You can just Frenzy Plant it, but if Wigglytuff comes in or Dedenne comes in, you can Sludge Bomb them. Venusaur also has the bulk that it doesn't need to shield a lot. Venusaur is so damaging with Frenzy Plant and bulky that it can almost flip and take Galar Stunfisk and Bastiodon. So it can get them weak enough that Pseudo Wudo can finish them off and have full charge moves ready to go for what's in. So either one of these work very well. Now, as I mentioned, the goal of this team is to get the shields down so Sudowoodo can clean up. Sudowoodo is not a great lead because there's just too much that it's weak to, but it's great if you can line it up correctly. So I love Talonflame lead. It is great against a lot of common leads, and nothing wants to take a Brave Bird. So you can always throw that and then drop into Safe Swap, and then you're up a shield most of the time. That's the line I came up with. Talonflame lead, Sudowoodo in the back, and then either Hydro Pump, Play Rough Azumarill, or Frenzy Plant, Sludge Bomb, Venusaur. That gives you a lot of play. Azumarill handles the dragons much better, whereas with Venusaur, you're going to have to rely on Sudowoodo and Talonflame, depending on the dragon, to punch through that damage. Right? A Brave Bird will still get you there with Talonflame, but it's going to be a lot harder. So you're just going to have to navigate your shields and get a field for it. So yeah, that is the line I made for Sudowoodo. Hopefully you will enjoy those, especially during this interim season where you don't lose rankings. So you might as well just run fun and have a blast and find out what fits nice for you.
Yeah.
All right, well then let's jump into the next segment now. We're going to talk about the Nemesis Cup. It hasn't gone live yet. We're 5 days from tournament starting. But we've seen lots of practice tournaments, so we can get initial reactions. So as I mentioned earlier, I ran in a 7-round round robin practice cup, and you can go check out PvP Steve's channel to enjoy some wonderful casting of it. And he's going to kind of read out my lines there, but I got a good feel for what I think people are running, but I'll let you talk because I've been rambling about Sudowoodo. So why don't you start us off on your initial thoughts about Nemesis Cup?
Yeah, so just for those who don't know, it's a Silph League meta, so it's going to be for the month of April, and we're looking at a kind of Commander Cup style. You want to pick one fighter, one anti-fighter, and then 4 bodyguards. So you have a list of 10 fighters, 10 anti-fighters, and then the bodyguards have a kind of usual restricted meta list to go with. So I'm sure we can pop the infographic up.
Yeah, and it's right here.
Yeah, right there. So the overarching thing that I'm seeing is there's going to be a whole lot of Poliwrath. There's going to be what I feel like a whole load of Noctowl, but I completely see your point that PvP Steve was echoing for you, that there'll be a whole lot of Frostlass because, you know, they're just, if Frostlass is runnable, people run it. And if other people are leaning into Noctowl, Frostlass is going to just have happy days there. My initial observations are that way too many people are running Beedrill and Galvantula. That's not a criticism. You know, I really like Beedrill, especially Shadow Beedrill. And when Galvantula works, it works. You know, I ran Galvantula in 2 out of the, what did I run? I played 5 cups this month. And I think I ran Galvantula in 2 of them. And it works, you know, it does its job, even though it does not want to see a Dragalge. You can just make it work in other ways. You know, obviously if you get hardwalled there, it's not going to work, but every other situation it pretty much worked in. So my initial feeling is I need to beat Galvantula and Beedrill, and I need to beat Poliwrath and Noctowl was where my mind went. And yeah, I kind of wanted to make a fire user work, but I just can't. I can't find one that I want to use. I tried to make Delphox work, but Beedrill can just go straight X Scissor and kill it way too easy. You know, I'm a bit of a Fell Stinger Shadow Beedrill user, so I hate to give up my long running play strats, but I might just have to TM Fell Stinger off for this cup. I think I'm gonna have to go X Scissor.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that's where my mind is, and I'm eyeing up Jumpluff with acrobatics to give me that little bit of resistance against the electric.
And Bolt Jumpluff just stays.
Yeah. And I haven't actually run it since acrobatics came out.
Oh, you're missing out. It feels amazing.
Yeah, I think that's definitely my initial feelings. I have to say that I feel like I'm going to end up running either Flygon or I don't know. I liked Chestnut the few times I ran it. I might be crazy enough to,
Yeah, I've been
but I
liking
probably
the look of Chestnut. I think
yeah,
he's got a place in this cup.
yeah. And it's a fun mon, you know. SmackDown is a possibility.
Yeah, yeah, you can run them multiple ways.
Yeah,
Vine Whip or SmackDown, both viable and both have their play, I think. Yeah, so I'm seeing kind of everyone gravitating to Polyrath of the fighters. It's just because it's got Ice Punch, it's got a bait move, it's very fast. Dynamic Punch will break anything weak to fighting. Ice Punch will handle your dragons and your flyers. So a lot of people are really looking at Polyrath because honestly, Gallade and Lucario and Blaziken are all super squishy. No one has a Pangoro. I mean, I super want one at
yeah,
1500, but it's not that it's not nearly as good as Scrafty. So even like the role it's filling isn't great. Quagsire, I think Quagsire is really good. Excadrill, I have tried desperately to make him work because I love Excadrill. But a Great League, even when you double resist something, it's still 33% of your HP is gone. It
yeah,
just, he never feels like he has the lasting power you need from especially your restricted pick. Um, Flygon's going to really struggle if Ice becomes prominent, mainly
yeah.
Frostlass and Walrein, but does super well outside of Ice types. So I definitely think there's play for Flygon, but I don't think you can lean into Flygon for the core. I think if you want to run Flygon, 100% go for it, but you need to make sure you have a strong core you can lean on for matchups where Flygon just isn't going to do it.
Yeah.
Uh, for the anti-fighters, everyone I'm seeing is running Frostlass or Noctowl because there's not a lot of bulk in this cup. And Noctowl has a lot of bulk, and Frostlass has enough bulk from its typing to get off enough charge moves to make it work. I want Galarian Rapidash to work because I love Psycho Cut Body Slam. I've run it in previous cups. It's super aggressive. It's just so squishy. Um, so Dedenne has actually been performing really well for me. The fairy type makes it great against counter users. The electric makes it do very well against Polyrath. I can throw either and do well there. It loses, quote unquote, to Galvantula, but just barely. So that's pretty easy to flip and it puts a lot of pressure on it. Dedenne, in my experience, was working really well as a safe swap. There's just very few matchups where it pops in and it doesn't do anything. You just feel like, oh, I've wasted it here. I wouldn't probably safe swap it in like a Drapion matchup, which I think as the cup goes on, people are going to start running more and more Drapion because when people get frustrated, they go to aggressive safe swaps. And Drapion is one of those that gets to charge moves fast enough, and it's got super great typing. As Poison Dark, it's only weak to ground. So it means they're going to get one or two charge moves off, and Shadow Drapion, everything hits super hard with it. So I haven't seen a lot of Drapion yet. I expect him to kind of go up in stocks unless a lot of Quagsires start getting played, because Quagsire just laughs at Drapion and has a wonderful time. So those are kind of my initial reads on the fighter and the anti-fighters. When I ran the practice cup, I specifically looked at how do I beat Polyrath and Frostlass because I expected to see a lot of those, and not surprisingly, I saw a ton of those. And I ran Tentacruel, and I love Tentacruel, and I know Zacharias does as well.
Oh yeah.
He's so bulky. He was viable before Poison Jab buff. Now Poison Jab's great. Acid Spray means that even in a horrible matchup, you can still make it an easy matchup for whatever comes in next. So you either win that or you get swap, which makes it feel good. And people always assume, or usually assume, you're going to bait and then hydro pump. So if you just land a hydro pump, you can also usually just instantly win the round because they're not going to come back from, a 75% HP Tentacruel. You just throw acid sprays on whatever they bring in next, and then you wrap it up. It obviously hates Galvantula, which is a big problem, which is why, and Walrein, it also doesn't like because the Earthquake and Quagsire. So those three are a real problem. So what I brought in to pair with it was Shadow Tyranitar, which is a bold non-bulky move, especially after I said I don't like running shadows last month. I'm now eating my
Yeah.
words. Because, man, Shadow Smackdown. I basically found out that if you 2-shield Shadow Tyranitar, it wins almost every matchup that's not a counter user and has a charge move ready for whatever comes in. So they're going to shield the first one usually, because even when it's neutral or resisted, Crunch on Poliwrath was still taking 25 to 30% of its HP with a chance of a defense debuff. So it was doing really, really well because I could lead Shadow Tyranitar, double shield if I wanted to, or let it die and bring in a hard counter that could run away with it. And I had Tentacruel and Dedenne in the back, both of them fairly safe. If I knew they didn't, I would bring in Dedenne if I knew that I was expecting Poliwrath. A lot of people like to leave him in the back, and Tentacruel just laughs at Poliwrath in the back. You don't have to shield anything, and you only have to acid spray, and you'll poison jab him down before he can kill you because you're resisting everything he throws at you. So that was kind of the thinking I had and the moves I brought out. It worked very well. I ran Lucario because I love Power Up Punch. Lucario, I always want to run him because I think he's got a fascinating move in typing, but he's like Excadrill. He's tissue paper. He handles psychics better than Blaziken, who also is tissue paper, but Blaziken just deletes him. I lost twice, 2 games, Blaziken versus energy lead Lucario, and I just never could get shields down. Couldn't get Shadow Ball before I was countered down. They didn't even get to Blaze Kick. I was so far ahead. So I probably won't run Lucario. I think he's viable. I think there are some matchups where he's great. He's so squishy, and this is a cup where I really want bulk, which is why I think people are looking at Poliwrath and Quagsire. But I do like Chestnut. I think I'm going to at least try Chestnut at some point in the future because he's bulky enough. Superpower is a great move. So I like it. We'll see in the long run how it plays out, but that's my initial kind of read on the meta. Is there's just not a lot of bulk. So any bulk outside of your main picks you can bring is great. Fire users are not great. I ran Incineroar and he had some great matchups, but he always feels like he's just there specifically to counter their Steel or Fairy or their Steel Fairy if they're bringing Mawile. And if you don't line him up, he just doesn't do anything. Delphox is the same way, but instead is Psychic instead of Dark, and that doesn't bode well for it. Macargo, I love Macargo. I always want an excuse to run Macargo. In a fighter cup, it struggles. I think all 3 of them are perfectly viable, and you can definitely find good lineups with them, but don't expect them to be flexible. Whereas, like when I mentioned Dedenne, right, does very well because there's a lot of waters in the cup, some flyers from the anti-fighter, as well as poison types, or it handles the fighters and the darks. So Dedenne always kind of feels pretty safe, and you don't have to just get it lined up against one specific Pokemon. Whereas I feel like with Incineroar and Delphox, you 100% have to get the right lineup on them, or they're just not going to do their job well. So yeah, that's kind of my feeling. I want the fires to be better, but maybe Charizard, because Charizard's great and it's got Dragon Claw. PvPoke is recommending Air Slash on Charizard. I think Fire Spin's actually better in this meta, because then Air Slash is great for dealing with fighters, but Fire Spin deals with all of those bug steals, because people are loving their Wormadams and their Fortress is coming back. And it also handles Ferrothorns and the Beedrills, right? So I think Fire Spin Charizard is probably a little bit better as the way the meta is going in this cup, a little more versatile than Air Slash. Oh, or is it Air Slash or is it Wing Attack? I forget because it's a legacy move.
Wing Attack, Dragon Breath, Fire Spin. I could see Dragon Breath. I could see it.
Yeah.
But you're giving up that fire damage until you get the blast burns. And I just, like you say, I think there's going to be bug steals. There's going to be grasses.
So if you if you really want to bring a fire, I think Charizard's the best one. Blaziken has Blaze Kick, so if you run Blaze and leave him in the back, he's great. You don't even need Blast Burn on him. Blaze Kick, Brave Bird is kind of where I like Blaziken now. Blaze Kick, because of his attack weight, is more than enough. But he's not going to be doing fire damage, and he's fragile. So you have to get through shields if you're going to rely on him for your fire damage. Whereas Fire Spin Charizard just has a great day.
And it picks, Blaziken going into your fighter role and Charizard going in your anti-fighter. So it's whatever fits your team.
Yeah, for sure. That's kind of the big thing, is you need to holistically look at what your plan is to build this team because of these two lock slots.
The best way to look at it is, I think, start looking at what you want to run in your bodyguard slot first. I don't think lock in your two first. Like, if you're hell bent on running, I don't know, Quagsire, if that's your favorite mon, or if you're saying that you really, really want to run a Shadow Gallade because the last time you ran Shadow Gallade you had great success, thumbs up, go for it. But I think the restricted ones are what you fill what you need at the end. That's the way I see it at the moment.
Yeah, I agree. Like I said, I started by looking at what I wanted to counter without my locked picks, namely Poliwrath and no, slipping me. What was the Frostlass? Duh. Yeah. So I went with Tentacruel, and I like Tentacruel a lot. I think it's a really viable mon in this cup. So speaking of, if we're going to start building from our bodyguards, what are your spice picks?
Yeah,
for this cup,
please. Oh yeah, I'll go first.
Your spice picks before we demand their spice picks.
Yeah. My spice pick is Shadow Shiftry, or well, it's not that spicy. It's what that's rank, I can't remember. It's like rank
50? 72 is where it is right
now. So yeah, it's pretty spicy. And next to it, that I almost don't want to say because I just want it just to creep up on people and mash them in the face, is Shadow Victory Bell.
Oh yeah, I know you love Shadow Grass. That's your secret.
Yeah. Shadow Shiftry and Shadow Victory Bell. I'm not going to run them together, but I definitely think there's a place. The Shadow Shiftry, my big problem is that it's weak to the counter.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm just not loving the idea of getting countered down by something, because I can't even remember. It's like 8 counters or something stupid like that. It does so quickly. Where Shadow Victory Bell resists. So you got that poison typing resisting the counters. You're, still not going to be the bulkiest mon in the world because it's Shadow and it's a Victory Bell. But those Razor Leafs are going to add up real quick. It can beat a Blaze in the windshield. It can, asterisk, beat a windshield. Used to be able to beat Frostlass in the windshield. And equally to what you were saying about Wigglytuff earlier, you don't throw. You just Razor Leaf the whole way down, and then you throw at what comes in next.
Yeah.
They don't know if it's going to be a Sludge Bomb with shadow damage, or an Acid Spray like your Tentacruel, or just a Leaf Blade. It has a pretty wide range of threats. You could Acid Spray whatever else comes in, make the second matchup okay. So even though they get a bit of fire, they're debuffed, so it doesn't go well for them. So you force switch back on them. And I think for me, it's one or the other. Shadowgrass, but in different flavors. It's either spammy charge moves, or it's just smacky in the face Razor Leaf. And I know a lot of people are haters, on the Shadow Razor Leafers, and the whole grass HOLE. I shan't say it directly for YouTube demonetization.
They're after us. No, I think those are solid picks. So I'm not going to mention the picks that are going to be in my spice video, just because I don't want you all to get the same information twice. That's boring. So I'm going to give you all 2 new picks. And Zacharias is loving the grass. I'm going to go with poison because I think poison's in a great spot right now. And surprisingly, PvPoke, I think, is recommending the wrong moves. So I don't think a lot of people are going to suspect them to perform as well as they do. So first, I'm going to recommend Skuntank. We all love old Skuntank. Poison Jab's great. Crunch is great. And PvPoke is recommending Sludge Bomb, and I think that's a terrible plan. Run that Flamethrower. Give yourself some fire coverage. It lets him work as a closer or as a safe swap. And so I think Skuntank, even with Sludge Bomb, he's rated 58 on PvPoke right now. But the difference between Sludge Bomb versus Flamethrower is he has 15 wins, 21 losses with Sludge Bomb versus 19 wins and 16 losses with Flamethrower. I think it's just a clearly better option for what the meta is bringing out here. So I do like Skuntank, and then equally, my good old friend Qwilfish. He's poison water. He's great. This is another one where they're recommending Sludge Bomb. You just don't, or Sludge Wave. You don't need Sludge Wave on Qwilfish. Run Aqua Tail because it's great, it's spammy, it's fun, and then run Ice Beam. Ice Beam picks up an extra 3 wins from Sludge Wave. Sludge Wave is 15 wins, 21 losses. Ice Beam is 17. So it picks up 2 wins, but it lets you deal with flyers that Sludge Wave isn't going to want to do and deal with dragons. So you win Flygon when you have Ice Beam. You don't win Flygon when you've got Sludge Wave. And I think that's a really important one to think about. So those are my picks. Qwilfish also, if you all go watch one of my old Spice videos when I ran an old tournament, really performs well with a 1 or 2 fast move advantage. He is my favorite safe swap because if you can avoid psychics, and you know this when you're got their line of 6, he's not going to go down quickly. And if he gets those 2 quick fast moves, he's going to get off like 3 Aqua Tails instead of 2. And that'll either flip a matchup or cripple the matchup when you're using him safely. So I really like Qwilfish as well. And I think he probably has a place in this cup.
Yeah, I like that. I like it. I really, really, really liked Qwilfish in, was it Fusion Cup I was running it in?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
In the factions meta.
Yeah.
Yeah, that nobody saw the Ice Beams coming. Nobody. They'd just get so used to the Aqua Tails, and then the Ice Beam would come in and completely ruin their day.
I remember that video. Poor guy lost 2 mons, and you were up to, they didn't shield, so they were 2 to 1 shields, but they lost both of their mons, so it was 1 mon versus 3, and it's just like, yep, nothing you can do there.
Chestnut just coming in with its Vine Whips, eats an Ice Beam. Oh, God.
The horror. All right, great. So I think those are some good Spice picks. Let us know yours, what you're thinking about running or wanting to run. So let's wrap it up here. We'll end with the questions we want you all to ask us. So first of all, perhaps most important, we obviously are covering both Go Battle League and Silph Cups right now. Would you all prefer we split those and just have one podcast for each, or do you not mind because you can jump to what you're interested in, or you're interested in all of it and you want to hear both in one spot? Let us know about that. Do you mind the longer format, or do you want them a little bit more digestible? Secondly, what topics do you want us to cover, right? We've covered team building. We've covered IVs. I think those are both great topics, but what Go Battle League topics do you really want us to kind of work through and deal with? As always, what mons do you want us to practice with on whose line? What lines do you want us to come up with? And then Zacharias, what question would you like to ask the fans?
Yeah, so a couple of friends have gone over to Liverpool for the World Championships, and I'm wondering if anybody else is, any of our listeners have gone over. I'm curious to know what you guys thought of it. I'd love to hear back. Like that, I think this will come out just after it, so it'd be good to hear what
reflections. Yeah. Fascinating. Hope some of you all made it out. All right. Well, thank you everyone for hanging out with us for a bit. We look forward to hearing with you, and we will see you all next time.